in some cities. Simply leaving your house feels exhausting. The traffic, the noise, the crowds, the pressure that never stops. And one day, a mentally exhausted young man decided to escape for just 3 days. But that short trip turned him into a millionaire. Ryan lived in a painfully overcrowded city where the streets were packed almost every hour of the day. Car horns never stopped, traffic lights felt endless, and even going outside for something simple felt mentally draining. Sometimes he stayed home for entire weekends just to avoid the stress of the city. Everything around him felt heavy. Work, driving, people, noise, waiting. It felt like his brain had been running nonstop for years without rest. One night, after another exhausting week, Ryan decided he needed a break. Nothing luxurious, just silence, just peace. He opened Airbnb and started searching for places far away from the city. Most of the listings looked expensive, overly designed, or fake. But then he found something strange, a tiny house hidden deep inside a forest. The listing had almost no reviews, no professional photography. Almost nobody had visited the place before. But despite all of that, something about it felt peaceful. It was as if his mind immediately connected to the place before he even arrived there. So he booked it for 3 days. The next morning, he packed a small bag, got into his car, and drove toward the forest. About 10 minutes before arriving, everything started changing. The roads became quieter, the trees became denser, the air became colder, and suddenly, the noise of the city disappeared completely. Even the road itself looked cinematic, like a scene from a movie. For the first time in months, Ryan felt calm before even reaching the destination. Then finally, he arrived. He stepped out of the car and stared at the tiny house quietly sitting between the trees. It was extremely small, but somehow, it felt perfect. He opened the door and instantly felt like he had entered another world. The smell of wood, the warm lighting, the silence, the sound of leaves moving outside. There was nothing luxurious about the place, just a comfortable bed, a small kitchen, a fireplace, an outdoor chair facing the forest, and absolute peace. And somehow, that was more than enough. Ryan placed his bags inside, then walked outside and sat facing the trees. Cold, clean air, bird sounds, fresh oxygen. For the first time in years, his mind felt quiet. The next 3 days changed him completely. He grilled meat outside at sunset, watched movies beside the fireplace at night, read books in the morning while drinking coffee. Sometimes he sat in silence for hours doing absolutely nothing, and strangely, those moments felt more valuable than his normal life in the city. It felt like he had been reborn. But eventually, the trip ended. Ryan returned to the city and immediately felt the pressure return. The traffic felt worse than before. The noise became unbearable. The stress came back instantly. And every single day after returning, he kept thinking about that tiny house, the silence, the forest, the peace. He missed it so much that it almost felt like an addiction. One night, he opened his savings account. $40,000. That was everything he owned after years of working. Originally, he planned to save $100,000 to finally buy an apartment and escape paying rent forever. But suddenly, a dangerous idea appeared in his mind. What if I create this feeling for other people? The thought refused to leave his head, so he started searching for land. Days later, he found something interesting. A forest property, 10,000 square meters, only $20,000. But the most important detail was its shape. The land was long and rectangular, which meant every tiny house could have its own private forest view. Without hesitation, Ryan bought the land. After purchasing it, he spent days planning the project carefully. He divided the property into 40 sections. Each tiny house would have around 250 square meters of private space. And during the planning process, Ryan realized something important. People did not actually need luxury resorts. They did not need giant swimming pools or expensive hotel lobbies. What people truly wanted was silence, nature, a fireplace, a campfire outside, a BBQ grill, comfortable outdoor seating, and a peaceful atmosphere. The real product was not the houses. The real product was emotional escape. After calculating everything, he realized each tiny house would cost around $10,000 to build. But he no longer had enough money, so he made one final sacrifice. He sold his car for $20,000. After buying the land, that left him with exactly $40,000, enough to build only 4 tiny houses. He borrowed his friend's car and drove to see the land for the first time after buying it over the phone. He met the previous owner, shook his hand, then immediately drove to an engineering company and explained his entire vision in detail. Months later, the first 4 tiny houses were completed exactly the way he imagined them. Simple, warm, peaceful, no unnecessary luxury, just comfort and silence. That same night, Ryan uploaded the listings to Airbnb. Then he sat staring at his phone nervously. A few minutes later, his phone buzzed. "Your first booking is confirmed." He froze. 30 minutes later, another booking, then another, then another. Within a few hours, all 4 tiny houses were fully booked. Ryan could not sleep that night. At $200 per night for each house, he had just made $800 in a single night. For the first time in his life, he felt like he had finally built something real. The next morning at 9 a.m., he drove to the tiny houses using his friend's car to make sure everything was ready before guests arrived at 11. But he was so nervous and excited that he stayed parked nearby in case anyone needed help. Eventually, he fell asleep inside the car. The next morning, he woke up around 7 a.m. and checked his phone. Then he stared at the screen in disbelief. During the night, all 4 tiny houses had already been booked again. He looked at the phone silently for a few seconds before whispering, "I actually did it." Days turned into months. One guest left. Another arrived immediately after. Ryan eventually built himself a small caretaker cabin beside the property where he stored cleaning supplies and managed the resort himself. He cleaned the houses personally, read every review, improved every detail, and many reviews kept repeating the same sentence: "This place healed us mentally." Years later, the project was finally complete. 40 tiny houses hidden deep inside the forest, fully booked for 6 months ahead. And it all started because one exhausted man decided to escape the city for just 3 days. That short vacation gave him peace, purpose, a vision, and eventually, an empire. And one quiet night, while sitting outside watching the warm lights of the tiny houses glowing between the trees, Ryan realized something important. Sometimes, the businesses that succeed the most are the ones that create the life you secretly wish to live yourself.